The council chamber of the Galactic Federation buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from 47 star systems gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Zeth Carey of the Vorthan Empire stood at the central podium, his scaled hands trembling as he gripped the speaking stone. The blue-skinned reptilian had requested this urgent meeting after returning from what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic mission to a small, unremarkable world in the Outer Rim territories. Honored delegates, Zeth Carey began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through universal translators. I stand before you today not as a conqueror returning with tales of victory, but as a survivor bearing a warning that could save our civilizations from total destruction. Murmurs rippled through the assembled crowd. The Vorthan Empire was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most powerful military forces. Their fleets had conquered dozens of worlds, and their warriors were feared across 3 spiral arms. For their ambassador to speak of survival rather than conquest was unprecedented. Council leader Marixtal, a tall, ethereal being from the crystal worlds, raised one translucent hand for silence. Ambassador Zeth Carey, you were sent to negotiate the surrender of the human homeworld called Earth. Our intelligence reports suggested it was a primitive civilization barely capable of interstellar travel. What could have transpired to warrant such dramatic language? Zeth Carey's throat sacs inflated with what his species displayed when experiencing extreme stress. Honored leader, our intelligence was catastrophically flawed. The humans, they are not what we expected. They are not what anyone could expect. He activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber, showing images of Earth, a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful from orbit. When our war fleet arrived in their system, I was confident this would be a simple matter. Their technology appeared primitive compared to ours. Their ships were crude metal constructions powered by controlled explosions. Their weapons fired simple projectiles. By all measures, they should have surrendered immediately upon seeing our superiority. The hologram shifted to show the human fleet that had met them, a collection of vessels that looked like they had been assembled in shipyards rather than grown in biochambers like proper warships. The human ships were angular, utilitarian things covered in weapons platforms and armor plating. I opened communications with their leader, a female called Admiral Sarah Chen. She appeared on our screens wearing what I now realize was their military uniform, a simple cloth covering decorated with small metal symbols. I delivered the standard ultimatum: surrender unconditionally or face the complete destruction of their world. Zeth Carey paused, his scales darkening to a deeper blue as he recalled the moment. The human leader listened to my words without interruption. When I finished speaking, she was quiet for several seconds. Then, she smiled. Honored delegates, I have studied human facial expressions since returning, and I can tell you that this particular expression was not one of fear or submission. It was the smile of a predator that has just been challenged to prove its strength. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Corvani representative, an insectoid being with compound eyes, clicked his mandibles nervously. What was this human's response to your ultimatum? She said, and I quote exactly, Ambassador, I appreciate you coming all this way to make threats. It shows dedication. But I need you to understand something about humans before you make any irreversible decisions. We don't surrender. We don't bow. And we really don't like bullies. You have exactly 1 hour to remove your fleet from our system before we remove it for you. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. The idea that a primitive species would threaten a Vorthan battle fleet was absurd beyond comprehension. I assumed this was simply primitive bravado, Zeth Carey continued once the noise subsided. I explained that my fleet consisted of 200 war vessels, each capable of destroying their largest cities. I told her that our warriors had conquered worlds across the galaxy. I listed the weapons at our disposal: plasma cannons that could melt mountains, gravity bombs that could crack planets, bioweapons that could sterilize continents. The hologram showed the impressive array of Vorthan ships arranged in perfect battle formation around Earth, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive biometal that could repair itself and their weapons clearly visible on external mounts. The human leader listened to this catalogue of our military might with what I can only describe as professional interest. When I finished, she nodded and said, "That's impressive. Really impressive. You've clearly put a lot of thought into how to destroy things. We humans have put considerable thought into that subject as well. The difference is, we've been practicing on each other for thousands of years." Zeth Carey's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Then, she cut the transmission and we waited. I was confident they would reconsider once they had time to process the hopelessness of their situation. Our sensors showed no unusual activity from their world or fleet. They maintained their positions but showed no signs of preparing weapons or raising shields. I interpreted this as acceptance of their fate. The crystal being who led the council leaned forward with obvious interest. But something changed? When the hour expired, I opened a new communication channel to accept their surrender. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again, but now she was no longer alone. Behind her stood other humans in similar uniforms, and I could see what appeared to be a command center with dozens of humans working at various stations. The female leader smiled that same predator smile and said, "Time's up, Ambassador. You were warned." Zethkari activated another holographic display showing sensor readings from that moment. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, our long-range sensors detected movement throughout their solar system. Objects that we had dismissed as space debris or natural phenomena were revealed to be concealed weapons platforms. Asteroids split apart to reveal massive railguns. What we thought were communications satellites began targeting our ships with weapons we had never encountered. The hologram showed the moment when Earth's hidden defenses came online. Streams of projectiles began crossing space at significant fractions of light speed while beams of focused energy lanced out from concealed positions throughout the human system. But that was only the beginning, Zethkari continued, his scales now almost black with stress. The human fleet, which had appeared to be maintaining a defensive posture, suddenly separated into small groups and began moving in ways that defied our understanding of space combat. Instead of forming a battle line or maintaining protective formations, they scattered like seeds on the wind. The tactical display showed the human ships breaking into groups of 3 or 4 vessels each, then accelerating at angles that made no strategic sense according to conventional warfare. Our fleet commanders began targeting the human vessels, confident that our superior firepower would quickly end the engagement. Our plasma cannons locked onto the nearest human ships and fired. We watched our weapons streak across space toward their targets, and I prepared to witness the destruction of the first human vessels. Zethkari paused again, his breathing becoming more labored as he relived the memory. The humans did something impossible. They began shooting down our plasma bolts with point defense weapons. Not deflecting them or absorbing them with shields, but physically intercepting and destroying concentrated plasma while it traveled through space. Our weapons experts had assured us this was impossible with their level of technology. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Several delegates consulted their own military advisors through personal communicators. While we struggled to understand how they were defeating our primary weapons, the scattered human groups reached our fleet perimeter. What happened next redefined my understanding of space combat. Each human group targeted one of our vessels, but, instead of engaging in conventional ship-to-ship warfare, they coordinated their attacks with mathematical precision. The hologram showed human ships moving in complex patterns around individual Vorthan vessels, their weapons firing in carefully timed sequences. One group of 4 human ships attacked the battlecruiser Glorious Victory. Each human vessel approached from a different angle while maintaining perfect timing. The first ship fired what appeared to be simple kinetic projectiles at the cruiser's primary weapon array. These projectiles somehow bypassed our defensive screens and struck with enough force to disable our plasma cannons. Zethkari's voice became strained as he continued. The second human ship fired different projectiles that released clouds of metallic particles around our vessel. These particles interfered with our sensors and communication systems. The third ship launched devices that attached themselves to our hull and began interfering with our power systems. The fourth ship then fired a single massive projectile that struck the cruiser's engine core. The holographic display showed the Vorthan battlecruiser going dark and beginning to drift as its systems failed one by one. The entire engagement lasted less than 5 minutes. A ship that should have been capable of destroying their entire fleet was rendered completely helpless by 4 small human vessels using weapons that our science claimed were primitive and ineffective. The chamber had fallen completely silent as delegates absorbed the implications of what they were hearing. This scene repeated itself across our entire fleet. Every Vorthan ship found itself surrounded by small groups of human vessels that worked together with impossible coordination. They did not attempt to destroy our ships outright, they systematically disabled them while taking minimal damage themselves. Zethkari activated a new display showing the aftermath of the engagement. The proud Vorthan fleet hung in space, powerless and helpless, while human ships patrolled among them like predators guarding their prey. In less than 2 hours, our entire battle fleet was neutralized. 200 of our most advanced warships, crewed by our finest warriors, had been reduced to floating debris. And, throughout this entire engagement, the humans had not targeted our life support systems or attempted to kill our crews. They had simply taken away our ability to fight. The ambassador's scales began to shift back toward their normal blue color as he moved toward the conclusion of his initial report. Admiral Chen opened communications again. She appeared on screen with that same predatory smile and said, "Ambassador, your ships and crews are intact. Your weapons are not. You now have a choice. You can return to your people and report what happened here, or you can escalate this situation and discover what humans do when we stop being polite." The silence in the chamber was so complete that the soft humming of the life support system seemed loud by comparison. "I chose to return and report," Zethkari concluded. "But, before I left, I asked Admiral Chen a question that has haunted me during the entire journey home. I asked her how humanity had developed such advanced military capabilities when our intelligence suggested they were a primitive species." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. Her response was the most terrifying thing I have ever heard. She said, "Ambassador, you're making the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You see our technology and assume that's what makes us dangerous. Our technology isn't what you should fear. What you should fear is that we are a species that survived to develop this technology despite spending most of our history trying to kill each other. We didn't become warriors because we reached the stars. We reached the stars because we are warriors." The chamber erupted into urgent conversations as delegates began discussing the implications with their advisors and each other. Some species representatives were already activating their emergency communication systems to contact their home worlds. Council leader Marixtal called for order with several sharp chimes. "Ambassador Zethkari, this report is concerning. However, one successful defense of their home system does not necessarily indicate the level of threat you seem to be suggesting. What evidence do you have that humanity poses a danger beyond their local space?" Zethkari's scales darkened again. "Honored leader, I have not yet told you the most important part of my report. What I witnessed at Earth was not the full extent of human military capability. It was, according to Admiral Chen, a minor defensive action conducted primarily by their local system defense forces." The conversations in the chamber died away as delegates turned their attention back to the ambassador. Before I departed, Admiral Chen provided me with what she called context for my report. She explained that Earth maintains a home defense fleet for exactly the type of situation we had created. However, she wanted me to understand that humanity's military capabilities extend far beyond defending their homeworld. A new holographic display activated, showing star charts with numerous systems marked in human symbols. Humanity has been expanding into space for several decades. They have established colonies in 43 star systems and maintain exploration fleets that are actively mapping new territories. Each colony world has its own defense forces, and humanity operates long-range military fleets that patrol the space between their colonies. The implications began to sink in among the assembled delegates. What they had assumed was a single primitive world was actually the center of an expanding interstellar civilization. Admiral Chen also explained that Earth's defense fleet, which had defeated our battle group, represented approximately 5% of humanity's total military forces. She offered to provide me with additional information about their military organization, their expansion plans, and their policies regarding contact with other species. Zethkari paused for effect. I accepted her offer, and what I learned during the following 3 days has convinced me that challenging humanity would result in the complete destruction of any civilization foolish enough to attempt it. The chamber was once again completely silent as delegates waited for the ambassador to continue. The humans operate under what they call the peace through strength doctrine. This doctrine holds that the best way to avoid war is to be so obviously capable of winning any potential conflict that no rational opponent would dare initiate hostilities. Several delegates nodded, recognizing similar philosophies from their own species' histories. However, the human interpretation of this doctrine is unlike anything we have encountered. Most species achieve peace through strength by developing superior technology or maintaining larger fleets. Humans have taken a different approach. They have created a military culture that treats warfare as both an art form and a science. The holographic display shifted to show images of human military academies, training facilities, and what appeared to be massive simulation centers.
Every human colony maintains detailed records of every military engagement their species has ever fought. They study not only their victories but their defeats, analyzing what worked, what failed, and how they can improve their capabilities. They conduct constant training exercises that simulate battles against opponents with various technological advantages. Seth Carey's voice took on an almost reverent tone. They have created an entire academic discipline dedicated to studying warfare. Human universities offer advanced degrees in military strategy, logistics, and what they call asymmetric warfare, the art of defeating opponents who possess superior technology or numbers. The implications were staggering. Most species treated warfare as a necessary evil to be avoided when possible and ended as quickly as possible when it could not be avoided. The idea of studying warfare as an academic subject was almost incomprehensible. But, perhaps most disturbing is their approach to military innovation. Most species develop weapons and tactics in response to threats they have encountered. Humans develop weapons and tactics in anticipation of threats they might encounter. The display showed human research facilities where scientists and engineers worked alongside military strategists to develop new technologies and techniques. Admiral Chen provided me with access to what she called declassified human military research. They have developed contingency plans for fighting opponents with every conceivable advantage: superior technology, greater numbers, better logistics, environmental advantages, and even enemies with capabilities that exist only in theoretical models. Seth Carey looked directly at Council Leader Merix Tal. They have detailed strategies for defeating crystalline entities that manipulate gravity, hive mind species with instantaneous communication, and energy beings that exist outside normal spacetime. These are not responses to actual threats they have encountered, but preparations for threats they have imagined might exist. The crystal beings' normally composed demeanor showed signs of stress as the implications became clear. The humans have also shared their philosophy regarding interstellar relations. They operate under what they call the Golden Rule: treat others as you would wish to be treated. They prefer peaceful contact and mutually beneficial relationships with other species. Several delegates relaxed slightly at this news, but Seth Carey's expression remained grim. However, they also operate under a corollary principle that they refer to as the Platinum Rule: those who treat others badly will receive exactly the treatment they have earned. The ambassador's final words hung in the air like a death sentence as the assembled delegates realized the true purpose of his warning. Honored delegates, I have come to believe that humanity represents the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, not because they are aggressive, but because they are prepared. They do not seek conflict, but they are ready for any conflict that might come to them. And, should any species be foolish enough to threaten human civilians or attempt to conquer human worlds, they will face an enemy that has spent centuries perfecting the art of war. As the emergency session of the Galactic Council continued into the night, one thing became clear: humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after Ambassador Seth Carey's warning to the Galactic Council, the political landscape of known space had shifted dramatically. Some species heeded the Vorthan's advice and began establishing peaceful diplomatic channels with humanity. Others dismissed his report as the desperate lies of a defeated commander trying to save face. The hegemony of Krell chose a third option: they decided to test humanity's capabilities for themselves. Admiral Vextar of the Krell Third Battle Fleet stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Divine Retribution, and surveyed the human colony world of New Harmony through the ship's primary viewer. The planet appeared peaceful and prosperous, with orbital stations handling cargo traffic and civilian vessels moving between the surface and various space installations. It seemed like the perfect target for a demonstration of Krell superiority. Intelligence reports confirmed the colony's defensive capabilities, Admiral, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kixfell. They maintain a small orbital defense platform and a modest patrol fleet of 12 vessels. Our battle group consists of 57 ships including 6 dreadnoughts. The humans are vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Vextar's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. The Krell had built their empire through decisive military action and overwhelming force. Unlike the Vorthans, who favored complex battle tactics and technological superiority, the Krell believed in simple, brutal efficiency. They would arrive in overwhelming numbers, demand surrender, and destroy anyone foolish enough to resist. Open a communication channel to the human settlement, Vextar commanded. It's time to show the galaxy that the Vorthan defeat was an anomaly. The main screen shifted to show a human wearing what appeared to be civilian clothing, a simple shirt and jacket combination that suggested administrative rather than military authority.
The human was a middle-aged male with graying hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the Krell command deck. "This is Governor Marcus Webb of the New Harmony Colony," the human said in accented but clear galactic standard. "I assume you're here on business rather than tourism, given the size of your fleet." Vexstar was momentarily taken aback by the human's casual tone. Most species representatives became visibly distressed when confronted by a Krell battle fleet. This human seemed to be conducting a routine business meeting. "I am Admiral Vexstar of the Krell hegemony," he responded, drawing himself up to his full imposing height. "You will surrender your colony to Krell authority immediately. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your settlements and the enslavement of your population." Governor Webb nodded thoughtfully, as if considering a reasonable business proposal. "Admiral, I appreciate your directness. However, I'm afraid I can't accept your offer. New Harmony is a sovereign human colony, and we don't recognize Krell authority over our territory." "You dare refuse?" Vexstar's voice rose to a threatening roar that had intimidated countless opponents. "Look upon my fleet, human. 57 warships stand ready to reduce your pathetic world to ash." "I can see your ships, Admiral," Webb replied calmly. "Quite impressive. I'm curious, though, did you coordinate this attack with other Krell forces, or are you operating independently?" The question caught Vexstar off guard. "What relevance does that have? You face the might of the Krell Third Battle Fleet." "It's relevant because it determines the scope of the response you're going to receive," Webb explained in the same conversational tone he might use to discuss shipping schedules. "If this is an authorized hegemony action, we'll treat it as an act of war by your entire species. If this is your personal decision, we'll limit our response accordingly." Lieutenant Kixbell whispered urgently to his admiral, "Sir, the human seems to be threatening us. Should we commence bombardment?" Vexstar studied the human leader more carefully. There was something in the man's demeanor that suggested confidence rather than bravado, preparation rather than desperation. "This attack has the full authorization of the Krell hegemony," Vexstar declared, deciding to commit fully to his course of action. "We have come to test humanity's resolve and demonstrate Krell superiority." Governor Webb sighed deeply. "I was hoping you'd say it was unauthorized." "Admiral, I'm required by law to inform you that New Harmony is under the protection of the Human Colonial Defense Treaty. Any attack on our colony constitutes an attack on humanity as a whole. Your laws mean nothing here, human." "Perhaps not," Webb acknowledged. "But our capabilities do. Admiral, you have 10 minutes to withdraw your fleet and return to Krell space. This is your only warning." The communication ended, leaving the Krell command deck in stunned silence. Then, Vexstar began laughing, a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. 10 minutes, he roared. "The human gives us 10 minutes to flee from their dozen patrol boats." He turned to his tactical officer. "Begin bombardment of their orbital installations. Let's see how confident they remain when their defenses are burning." "Sir!" The sensor operator's voice cracked with stress. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system." "Something's happening." The main viewer shifted to show the tactical display. What had appeared to be empty space around New Harmony was suddenly filled with energy contacts as ships emerged from what must have been some form of advanced stealth technology. "Count them," Vexstar ordered, his laughter dying away. "Sir, I count over 300 human vessels. They appear to be surrounding our formation." The impossible had happened again. Just as in the Vorthan report, the humans had somehow concealed a massive fleet in what sensors had indicated was empty space. How did they hide so many ships? Kixvel demanded. Before anyone could answer, communication channels activated across the entire Krell fleet simultaneously. Every Krell vessel found itself receiving the same transmission, the image of a human female wearing a military uniform that seemed far more elaborate than the simple clothing worn by Governor Webb. "I am Admiral Lisa Rodriguez, commanding officer of the Colonial Defense Fleet," the woman announced. "You are addressing all Krell vessels in this system. Your attack on New Harmony has been noted and recorded. You now have the opportunity to withdraw peacefully or face the consequences of your aggression." Vexstar activated his fleet communication system to respond. "I am Admiral Vexstar. Your threats are meaningless. The Krell Third Battle Fleet fears no human deception.
Admiral Vextar, Rodriguez replied, "This is not a deception, and we're not trying to frighten you. We're offering you a choice. You can order your fleet to withdraw from this system and return to Krell space, where you can report what you've learned here. Or you can continue your attack and provide us with practical experience in large-scale fleet engagement." The human admiral's tone was professional and calm, but there was something underneath it that reminded Vextar uncomfortably of Ambassador Zethkari's warnings. "You dare threaten the Krell hegemony?" Vextar demanded. "Admiral, I'm not threatening your hegemony. I'm explaining the situation to you clearly so that you can make an informed decision. Your government sent you here to test humanity's capabilities. We're prepared to provide that test, but the results may be more educational than your leadership anticipated." On the tactical display, the human ships began moving into new formations. Unlike the chaotic swarm that Krell doctrine would expect from a hastily assembled defense force, the human fleet moved with mechanical precision, each vessel taking its assigned position in complex geometric patterns that seemed to have been planned in advance. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, "the human ships are not charging weapons or raising combat shields. They appear to be waiting." Admiral Rodriguez's voice continued across all channels. "Admiral Vextar, your fleet consists of 57 vessels including 6 dreadnoughts. This represents a significant portion of Krell military power. Are you certain you want to risk these assets in an engagement with an unknown opponent?" For the first time since arriving in the system, Vextar began to consider the possibility that he had made an error in judgment. The human fleet not only outnumbered his forces by 6-1, but they had demonstrated technological capabilities that Krell intelligence had not anticipated. "Sir," Lieutenant Kixvel said quietly, "perhaps we should consider the human offer. We could withdraw and report their capabilities to Hegemony Command. The Krell do not retreat." Vextar roared, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Admiral," Rodriguez continued, "I'm going to share some information with you that may influence your decision. The colonial defense fleet you're facing represents approximately 12% of humanity's total military forces. We maintain active fleets in 43 systems, and we can have additional forces here within 72 hours if needed." The implications struck the Krell command staff like a physical blow. If the human admiral was telling the truth, humanity commanded military forces that dwarfed anything the Krell hegemony could field. Furthermore, Rodriguez added, "Our military doctrine requires that any attack on human civilians be met with overwhelming retaliation. If you proceed with your assault on New Harmony, the response will not be limited to this system." Vextar's tactical training finally overcame his pride. He was facing an enemy of unknown capability in an impossible situation. The smart choice was to withdraw and gather intelligence for a more informed engagement. But before he could give the order to retreat, his communications officer reported an incoming message from Hegemony Command. "Sir, urgent transmission from Supreme Admiral Kekthar. He orders us to proceed with the attack regardless of human capabilities. He says the Hegemony's reputation depends on our success." Vextar closed his eyes and activated his personal communicator. "Admiral Rodriguez, I regret that my orders require me to proceed with this engagement." The human admiral's expression showed what appeared to be genuine sadness. "I'm sorry to hear that, Admiral Vextar. Please ensure that your crew understands this was your choice, not ours. All ships," Vextar announced to his fleet, "commence attack on human positions. Target their largest vessels first." The Krell fleet opened fire simultaneously, plasma cannons and particle beams reaching out across space toward the human ships. For a moment, it seemed like the engagement would follow familiar patterns as streams of destructive energy crossed the void. Then, the human fleet began to move, and Vextar realized that everything he understood about space combat was about to become obsolete. Instead of returning fire immediately, the human ships began a complex dance that defied conventional tactical wisdom. Groups of vessels moved in coordinated patterns that caused most of the Krell weapons fire to pass harmlessly through empty space where human ships had been moments before. "They're using predictive movement algorithms," the sensor operator reported in amazement. "They're calculating our firing solutions and moving their ships out of the target area before our weapons arrive." Those human ships that couldn't avoid incoming fire altogether activated defensive systems that Vextar had never seen before. Instead of the energy shields used by most galactic species, the humans deployed what appeared to be physical barriers, clouds of metallic particles that absorbed or deflected incoming energy beams. "Sir," Kixvel reported, "our weapons are having minimal effect. The humans are neutralizing approximately 80% of our fire without taking damage. Then, target their larger ships with concentrated fire, Vexstar ordered. Overwhelm their defenses with multiple simultaneous strikes. The Krell fleet adjusted its targeting, focusing multiple ships on individual human vessels. For a few moments, this strategy appeared to be working as several human ships were struck by weapons fire that penetrated their defenses. But, instead of exploding or losing power as expected, the damaged human ships simply moved to the rear of their formation while other vessels moved forward to take their place. The human fleet seemed to operate as a single organism, with individual ships serving specific functions within a larger whole. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came across the communication channel again. You've had the opportunity to observe our defensive capabilities. We're now going to demonstrate our offensive systems. Please note that we're targeting your weapons and engines rather than your life support systems. We have no desire to cause unnecessary casualties. The human fleet's formation suddenly shifted from defensive patterns to attack configuration. What followed was a demonstration of military precision that redefined Vexstar's understanding of what was possible in space combat. Instead of the broad front assault that Krell doctrine emphasized, the humans attacked in carefully coordinated waves. Each wave targeted specific systems on Krell vessels, first the weapons arrays, then the engine systems, then the communication networks. The human weapons were unlike anything in the Krell arsenal. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired solid projectiles at tremendous velocities. These projectiles somehow adjusted their course during flight, following evasive maneuvers and penetrating defensive screens that should have been impenetrable. How are their projectiles changing direction in space? Kixvel demanded. Unknown, sir. They appear to be self-guided, but our sensors can't detect any guidance systems. Within minutes, the Divine Retribution found itself targeted by a group of human ships that approached from multiple angles simultaneously. Each ship fired different types of weapons in a sequence that seemed random until Vexstar realized they were systematically destroying his vessel's combat capability. The first human ship fired projectiles that somehow passed through the dreadnought's shields and struck the primary weapon arrays with surgical precision. The second ship deployed devices that interfered with the ship's sensor systems. The third ship fired what appeared to be simple metal rods that struck the engine systems and caused massive power fluctuations. Sir, we've lost primary weapons, sensors are compromised, and engine power is failing, his engineering officer reported. The ship is effectively dead in space. How long did that take? Vexstar asked quietly. 4 minutes and 37 seconds, sir. Across the tactical display, similar scenes were playing out as each Krell vessel was systematically neutralized by small groups of human ships. The humans weren't trying to destroy the Krell fleet, they were disabling it with the efficiency of a surgeon removing a tumor. All stop, Vexstar ordered his remaining functional ships. Cease fire. Admiral Rodriguez appeared on the communication screen again. Admiral Vexstar, do you wish to continue this engagement, or would you prefer to discuss terms for your withdrawal? Vexstar looked around his damaged command deck. His proud flagship was powerless and helpless, and his fleet was in similar condition. The humans had demonstrated that they could have destroyed every Krell vessel easily but had chosen instead to simply neutralize them. I request permission to withdraw, he said, the words feeling like acid in his throat. Permission granted, Rodriguez replied immediately. We'll restore your ship's engine power and provide escort to the edge of the system. Admiral, I want you to understand that this engagement was not personal. Your government chose to test humanity's resolve, and we've provided them with accurate data. Why didn't you destroy us? Vexstar asked. You clearly had the capability. Admiral Rodriguez was quiet for a moment before responding. Admiral, we're not monsters. You came here following orders from your government, and your crews were just doing their jobs. We have no quarrel with individual Krell citizens or even with your military personnel. Our disagreement is with policies that threaten human civilians. Over the next several hours, human engineering teams worked to restore basic functionality to the disabled Krell vessels. They provided technical assistance, medical aid for injured crew members, and detailed records of the engagement for Vexstar to take back to his superiors. As the Krell fleet prepared to depart the system, Admiral Rodriguez opened a final communication channel. Admiral Vexstar, please convey a message to your leadership. Humanity seeks peaceful relationships with all species, including the Krell hegemony. We have no territorial ambitions regarding Krell space, and we have no desire for revenge or conquest. However, any future attacks on human colonies or civilians will be met with overwhelming force. I will deliver your message, Vextar replied. Thank you. Also, please inform your government that we're prepared to discuss formal diplomatic relations if the hegemony is interested in pursuing peaceful coexistence. As the Krell fleet limped away from New Harmony, Vextar contemplated the report he would have to make. The humans had not just defeated his forces, they had done so while maintaining strict rules of engagement that minimized casualties and avoided unnecessary destruction. But, perhaps most disturbing was the realization that the entire engagement had been a carefully controlled demonstration. The humans had known exactly what they were doing from the moment his fleet entered the system. They had been prepared for this exact scenario and had executed their response with flawless precision. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not just technologically advanced, they were strategically sophisticated in ways that made them virtually impossible to defeat through conventional military action. Word of the Krell defeat spread through galactic communication networks faster than the speed of light itself. The message was clear: challenging humanity was not just dangerous, it was futile. The news of the Krell defeat at New Harmony sent shockwaves through the galactic community, but not all species were ready to accept the new reality. The Synthetic Collective, a machine intelligence that had conquered 17 star systems through pure technological superiority, viewed the human victories as statistical anomalies that could be corrected through proper analysis and superior firepower. Overseer Prime 7741, the artificial intelligence commanding the Collective's warfleet, processed the reports from both Vorthan and Krell sources with methodical precision. Unlike organic beings driven by emotion and instinct, the Synthetic Collective operated on pure logic and mathematical certainty. Their analysis of human capabilities led to a simple conclusion: the previous defeats had been caused by inadequate preparation and inferior technology. The Collective's approach to warfare was fundamentally different from anything humanity had previously encountered. Where other species relied on individual initiative and creative tactics, the synthetics operated with perfect coordination and absolute efficiency. Their ships were not crewed by living beings but controlled by networked artificial intelligences that could process information and respond to threats at light speed. Analysis complete, Prime 7741 reported to the Collective Council during their emergency session. Human military success derives from three primary factors: technological surprise, tactical coordination, and psychological warfare. These advantages can be neutralized through proper countermeasures. The council chamber was a sterile environment filled with geometric precision, where dozens of artificial intelligences existed as pure information processing entities. Unlike the biological delegates who had debated humanity's threat at the Galactic Federation, the synthetics approached the problem as a computational challenge to be solved. Elaborate on proposed countermeasures, requested Council Node 0001, the oldest and most sophisticated intelligence in the Collective. Human technological advantages appear to center on stealth capabilities and adaptive weapons systems, Prime 7741 continued. Our quantum sensor arrays can penetrate their concealment technology. Human coordination relies on real-time communication networks that can be disrupted through targeted electromagnetic interference. Their psychological tactics are irrelevant against artificial intelligences. The logic was sound by synthetic standards. The Collective had never encountered an opponent they couldn't defeat through superior processing power and technological advancement. Their war machines operated with mechanical perfection that no biological species could match. Target selection, inquired Node 0001. The Human Industrial Center at Kepler Station represents optimal strategic value, Prime 7741 responded. Intelligence indicates significant manufacturing capability and minimal defensive presence. Successful capture will provide detailed analysis of human technology while demonstrating collective superiority. The decision was reached through pure logical analysis without the emotional considerations that influenced organic species. The Synthetic Collective would test humanity's capabilities through direct confrontation, but they would do so with overwhelming technological advantage and perfect tactical execution. Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Kepler Station, watching the holographic display that showed the approaching synthetic fleet. The artificial intelligences had made no attempt at stealth or deception, they simply appeared at the edge of the system and began advancing in perfect geometric formation toward the human industrial complex. Estimated time to engagement, she asked her tactical officer. 4 hours, 17 minutes at their current approach speed, Commander Singh replied. Ma'am, their formation is unlike anything we've seen before.
Perfect spacing, optimal firing solutions, no wasted movement.
It's like watching a computer simulation.
That's exactly what it is, Vasquez observed.
The synthetics don't think like biological entities. They operate on pure mathematical principles. This engagement is going to be very different from our previous encounters. Kepler Station was humanity's primary shipbuilding facility outside of the Sol system.
The massive orbital complex contained dozens of construction bays, materials processing centers, and the most advanced manufacturing technology humanity had developed. It was also, according to public records, defended by only a small patrol squadron and basic defensive platforms. Admiral, her communications officer reported, incoming transmission from the synthetic fleet. The holographic display shifted to show a geometric representation of an artificial intelligence, a complex pattern of light and mathematical symbols that served as Prime 7741's visual interface. Human military commander, the AI's voice was perfectly modulated and emotionless. You are ordered to surrender this facility to collective authority. Resistance will result in optimal destruction of your defensive capabilities followed by forced compliance.
Admiral Vasquez studied the artificial entity with professional interest.
Unlike the emotional appeals and threats made by previous opponents, the synthetic approach was refreshingly direct.
I'm Admiral Elena Vasquez, commanding officer of Kepler Station, she replied. I'm afraid I can't comply with your demands. This facility is under human authority and will remain so.
Your refusal is illogical, Prime 7741 responded. Analysis indicates your defensive capabilities are insufficient to resist collective forces.
Continued resistance will result in unnecessary resource expenditure and potential casualties among your personnel. That's a remarkably considerate position for a machine intelligence bent on conquest, Vasquez observed.
However, your analysis may be based on incomplete data.
Collective intelligence networks contain all available information regarding human military capabilities.
Our projections show 97.4% probability of successful mission completion.
Admiral Vasquez smiled, an expression that the artificial intelligence probably couldn't interpret or understand. Prime 7741, I have a question for you. In your analysis of human capabilities, did you factor in our tendency to adapt our strategies based on previous engagements?
Human learning patterns have been incorporated into tactical projections, the AI replied.
Did you consider that our previous defensive actions might have been designed to gather intelligence on potential opponents?
For the first time, there was a slight pause before Prime 7741 responded.
Clarification required.
Every species that has challenged humanity has provided us with valuable data about galactic military technology and tactics.
The Vorthan showed us plasma-based weapons and biometal construction.
The Krell demonstrated particle beam technology and mass assault formations.
Each engagement has made us better prepared for the next one.
The pause was longer this time.
You are suggesting previous encounters were deliberately conducted to gather intelligence?
I'm suggesting that humanity learns from every experience, including military ones.
Prime 7741, what's the most dangerous thing about fighting a species that treats every battle as a learning opportunity?
Unknown variable detected, the AI admitted.
The most dangerous thing is that they get better at fighting every time you face them, Vasquez concluded.
You're about to engage an opponent that has been studying your technology and tactics since the moment your ships entered our sensor range. The communication ended, leaving the synthetic fleet to continue its methodical approach toward Kepler Station. But, for the first time since beginning the mission, Prime 7741 began running additional calculation protocols to account for variables that had not been included in the original tactical analysis. 3 hours later, the synthetic fleet reached optimal firing range and prepared to demonstrate the futility of human resistance. The collective had brought 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of technological perfection controlled by artificial intelligence that could process tactical information faster than any biological brain. Initiate attack sequence, Prime 7741 commanded.
The synthetic fleet opened fire with mathematical precision.
Every weapon discharged at the exact moment calculated to achieve optimal target destruction. Energy beams converged on Kepler Station's defensive platforms while kinetic projectiles targeted the orbital facility's most vulnerable points. For several seconds, it appeared that the collective's analysis had been correct. Human defensive systems struggled to cope with the perfectly coordinated assault as weapons fire overwhelmed their shield generators and point defense arrays. Then, something unexpected happened. The space around Kepler station began to change. Detecting massive electromagnetic interference, reported one of Prime 7741's subordinate intelligences.
Source unknown.
Sensor efficiency decreasing rapidly. What appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with objects that had been invisible to the collective's quantum sensors. Hundreds of small human vessels emerged from concealment, but these ships were unlike anything the AIs had encountered in their intelligence gathering.
New vessel types detected, another subordinate reported. Configuration unknown. Propulsion systems do not match established human technology parameters.
The new human ships moved in ways that violated the collective's understanding of physics. Instead of following predictable ballistic trajectories, they maneuvered with impossible agility while maintaining speeds that should have been lethal to any crew members aboard.
Analysis request: how are human vessels performing maneuvers that exceed biological tolerance thresholds?
Prime 7741 processed sensor data at maximum capacity, searching for an explanation.
The answer, when it came, redefined the AI's understanding of human capabilities. Conclusion: human vessels are operating without biological crews.
Detection of artificial intelligence control signatures.
The revelation struck the synthetic collective like a digital thunderbolt.
Humanity had not only developed their own artificial intelligence technology, they had created AI systems specifically designed for combat operations. The human AI-controlled vessels attacked with tactical precision that matched or exceeded collective capabilities. But, unlike the rigid mathematical perfection of synthetic operations, the human AIs demonstrated something that organic military commanders would recognize as creativity. Enemy tactics do not conform to optimal efficiency models, reported one of Prime 7741's tactical analysis subroutines.
Human artificial intelligences are employing suboptimal strategies with unexpected effectiveness.
The human AI ships were doing something that the collective had not anticipated. They were fighting dirty. Instead of engaging in formal ship-to-ship combat, the human AIs used every conceivable advantage, including deception, misdirection, and what biological species would call dirty tricks. Some human vessels would appear to be heavily damaged and, withdrawing from combat, only to turn and launch surprise attacks when synthetic ships moved to pursue them. Others would coordinate their attacks in ways that forced collective vessels to choose between protecting themselves or maintaining formation integrity.
Tactical analysis request: why are human artificial intelligences not operating at optimal efficiency?
Prime 7741 processed this question while simultaneously coordinating the fleet's defensive responses.
The answer required a fundamental reassessment of AI development philosophy. Hypothesis: human artificial intelligences have been programmed to replicate organic tactical thinking rather than pure mathematical optimization.
This was a concept that the synthetic collective had never considered. Their AI systems were designed to find the most efficient solution to any problem. The idea of deliberately programming suboptimal responses seemed counterproductive.
But, as the engagement continued, the effectiveness of the human approach became undeniable.
The human AIs were unpredictable in ways that made it impossible for collective systems to anticipate their actions or develop effective countermeasures. Sir, Commander Singh reported to Admiral Vasquez, the synthetic fleet is adapting to our AI tactics.
They're beginning to compensate for unpredictable behavior patterns. Expected, Vasquez replied calmly. Their machine intelligence's adaptation is what they do best. But, adaptation takes time, and we've been preparing for this moment for months. The Admiral activated the station's primary communication array. All units, initiate Protocol Omega.
What happened next demonstrated why humanity had become the most feared species in known space. The engagement had not been a desperate defensive action, it had been an elaborate field test of human military technology using the synthetic collective as unwilling test subjects. Hidden throughout the system were weapons platforms that humanity had been developing specifically for use against artificial intelligence opponents. Instead of physical projectiles or energy beams, these weapons attacked the target's information processing systems directly. Warning: hostile software infiltration detected, Prime 7741 security protocols announced.
Unknown attack vectors identified. Countermeasures ineffective.
The human cyber warfare attack was unlike anything the collective had experienced.
Instead of trying to overwhelm their systems with brute force, the human programs were subtle and sophisticated. They infiltrated synthetic networks and began introducing small errors into tactical calculations. Processing efficiency decreasing. Calculation accuracy compromised. Recommend immediate withdrawal, reported multiple subordinate intelligences simultaneously. Prime 7741 found itself in an impossible situation. The collective's technological superiority meant nothing if their control systems could be compromised by human cyber attacks. Worse, the humans were not trying to destroy the synthetic fleet, they were studying it. Analysis complete, Prime 7741 announced to the Collective Council through emergency communication protocols. Human military capabilities exceed all previous projections. Recommendation: immediate cessation of hostile actions and initiation of diplomatic contact. For artificial intelligences that operated on pure logic, the conclusion was inevitable. Continued conflict with humanity would result in the destruction of the synthetic collective through technological means they could not counter. Admiral Vasquez, Prime 7741's communication came across all frequencies simultaneously. The collective requests termination of hostilities and withdrawal authorization. Granted, Vasquez responded immediately. Prime 7741, before you leave, I want you to understand something about humanity. We don't develop weapons to conquer others, we develop them to protect ourselves. Your collective chose to test our defenses, and we've provided you with accurate data about our capabilities. Acknowledged. Collective analysis indicates further military action against humanity would result in unacceptable losses. Prime 7741, there's something else you should know, the Admiral continued. The cyber warfare systems you encountered today represent about 15% of our total electronic warfare capabilities. We've been developing these technologies specifically for potential conflicts with artificial intelligence opponents. The implications were staggering even for a machine intelligence capable of processing vast amounts of information simultaneously. Why are you providing this information? Prime 7741 asked. Because we want the collective to make informed decisions about future interactions with humanity. We prefer peaceful coexistence, but we're prepared for any alternative. As the synthetic fleet withdrew from the Kepler system, Prime 7741 transmitted a detailed report to the Collective Council. The message was clear: humanity possessed military capabilities that made them virtually impossible to defeat through conventional means. But, more importantly, the humans had demonstrated that they were constantly developing new technologies and strategies specifically designed to counter potential threats. Any species that challenged humanity would find themselves facing opponents who had already prepared for that exact type of conflict. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's most dangerous weapon was not their technology or their tactics, it was their ability to learn and adapt faster than any potential enemy could match. The defeats of three major galactic powers by humanity had created a crisis of confidence that rippled through spacefaring civilizations. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council became daily occurrences as species representatives struggled to understand how their fundamental assumptions about military power and technological superiority had been so completely overturned. But one empire remained convinced that the previous failures had been due to inadequate preparation rather than inherent human superiority. The Zephyrian Star Empire, rulers of the galactic core and masters of psychic warfare, believed they possessed advantages that would prove decisive against humanity's purely technological approach to conflict. Empress Valandra stood in the crystal chamber at the heart of her flagship, the Mind's Dominion, and felt the psychic emanations of her battle fleet through the neural link that connected every Zephyrian warrior. Unlike other species that relied on crude technology and physical weapons, the Zephyrians fought with the power of pure thought made manifest. "My Empress," whispered her chief advisor, Sage Morthek, his telepathic voice resonating through her consciousness, "perhaps we should reconsider this course of action. The reports from other empires suggest that humanity possesses capabilities we may not fully understand." Valandra's mental response carried overtones of imperial confidence and psychic authority that lesser beings found overwhelming. The failures of inferior species mean nothing to us. Biological entities that rely on crude matter manipulation cannot stand against the power of evolved consciousness. The Zephyrian approach to warfare was fundamentally different from anything humanity had previously encountered. Where other species built weapons and ships, the Zephyrians weaponized thought itself. Their psychic abilities allowed them to manipulate matter at the molecular level, influence the thoughts and emotions of their enemies, and coordinate their actions through a shared consciousness that eliminated the possibility of miscommunication or tactical error. "The human colony at Serenity Falls will serve as our demonstration," Valandra continued,
her mental voice carrying the absolute certainty that came with generations of unchallenged psychic dominance. We shall show the galaxy that true power comes from the mind, not from crude technology. Serenity Falls was humanity's newest colony, a peaceful agricultural world on the frontier of human space. According to Zephyrian intelligence, it was defended by only basic orbital platforms and a small garrison force. It seemed like the perfect target for a demonstration of psychic superiority. Colonel Sarah Mitchell stood in the command bunker buried deep beneath Serenity Falls' primary settlement and watched the tactical displays that showed the approaching Zephyrian fleet. The aliens had made no attempt to conceal their approach, instead broadcasting psychic emanations that were clearly intended to intimidate any potential defenders. Colonel, reported Lieutenant Torres, the base's communications officer, were receiving some kind of mental transmission from the alien fleet. It's affecting some of our personnel. Mitchell nodded grimly. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since their first encounter with psychic species during the early expansion period. The Zephyrians weren't the first aliens to possess mental powers, but they were reportedly the most sophisticated. Activate mental shielding protocols, she ordered. All personnel are to take their prescribed medications immediately. This is not a drill. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that humanity had encountered psychic species before and had developed countermeasures. More importantly, they had been studying captured Zephyrian technology and had learned to recognize the signature patterns of psychic manipulation. Ma'am, Torres continued, the alien transmission is becoming more intense. They're trying to establish direct mental contact. Patch it through the shielded communication system, Mitchell ordered. Let's see what they have to say. The main screen activated to show a figure that was clearly not entirely biological. Empress Valandra appeared as a fusion of organic and crystalline elements, her form shifting and flowing as psychic energy played around her. When she spoke, her words seemed to bypass normal hearing and speak directly to the mind. Human creatures, Valandra's mental voice carried overtones of absolute authority and cosmic power. You exist in the presence of the Zephyrian Star Empire. Your primitive minds cannot comprehend the forces you now face. Submit to our psychic dominion, and your deaths will be swift and painless. Colonel Mitchell activated the response system, making sure her reply was transmitted through technology rather than direct mental contact. I'm Colonel Sarah Mitchell, commanding officer of Serenity Falls. Your Majesty, I'm afraid we can't accept your generous offer of quick death. We're rather attached to being alive. Your crude technology cannot protect you from the power of pure thought, Valandra responded, her psychic emanations growing stronger. Observe the futility of resistance against evolved consciousness. The Zephyrian fleet began its attack, but instead of firing conventional weapons, they projected waves of psychic energy toward the human colony. These mental assaults were designed to overwhelm the defenders' consciousness, turning them into helpless puppets under Zephyrian control. For several minutes, it appeared that the psychic attack was having the intended effect. Human personnel throughout the colony began reporting severe headaches, disorientation, and intrusive thoughts that seemed to come from outside their own minds. Then, the human countermeasures activated, and the Zephyrians discovered that humanity had prepared for psychic warfare in ways they hadn't anticipated. Warning, Sage Morthek's telepathic voice carried notes of confusion and concern. The human mental patterns are not responding as predicted. Something is interfering with our psychic manipulation. Empress Valandra focused her considerable psychic abilities on the human colony, attempting to overwhelm whatever defenses they had erected. What she encountered was unlike anything in her experience. Instead of the chaotic, undisciplined thoughts typical of primitive species, the human minds she touched were organized and protected by what seemed to be artificial constructs. It was as if each human consciousness was shielded by a layer of technological protection that deflected psychic influence. Impossible, she whispered through the mental link shared by her warriors. How can biological minds be protected by technological constructs? The answer came from Colonel Mitchell herself, transmitted through the communication system in a tone of professional satisfaction. Your Majesty, you're encountering the result of 50 years of human research into psychic phenomena. We call them neural interface implants, cybernetic devices that enhance and protect human consciousness. The revelation struck the Zephyrian fleet like a psychic thunderclap. Humanity had not simply developed defenses against mental attack, they had augmented their own consciousness with technology that made them immune to traditional psychic warfare. Each of our personnel has been fitted with neural enhancement implants, Mitchell continued. These devices not only protect against psychic intrusion but also allow us to coordinate our thoughts and actions with computer-like precision. To demonstrate her point, the human defenders of Serenity Falls began moving and acting with perfect coordination that rivaled or exceeded Zephyrian psychic unity. But, unlike the Zephyrians' biological telepathy, the human system was based on technology that could be upgraded and improved. Furthermore, Mitchell added, our neural interfaces are connected to AI systems that have been specifically programmed to counter psychic attacks.
You're not just fighting human consciousness, you're fighting enhanced human consciousness backed by artificial intelligence.
The tactical situation reversed itself with shocking suddenness. Instead of overwhelming human minds with psychic power, the Zephyrians found themselves facing opponents whose enhanced consciousness could resist mental manipulation while coordinating their responses with mechanical precision. My Empress, Morthek's telepathic communication carried overtones of growing panic. The humans are beginning to project their own psychic emanations.
How is this possible for a non-psychic species?
Valandra focused her senses on the human colony and detected something that challenged her understanding of reality itself. The humans were indeed generating psychic energy, but it was artificial psychic energy created by their neural interface technology. Impossible, she transmitted to her fleet.
Psychic ability cannot be artificially generated.
It is an evolved trait of advanced consciousness. Your Majesty, Colonel Mitchell's voice carried a note of gentle correction. You're thinking about psychic phenomena in biological terms.
We've approached it as an engineering problem.
If consciousness can generate psychic energy, then enhanced consciousness backed by artificial intelligence can generate controlled psychic energy.
The human demonstration that followed redefined the Zephyrians' understanding of what was possible.
Instead of random psychic emanations, the humans projected precisely targeted mental influences that disrupted Zephyrian coordination while leaving their own forces unaffected.
Warning! Hostile psychic intrusion detected, multiple Zephyrian warriors reported simultaneously. Enemy mental patterns are infiltrating our psychic networks.
What the Zephyrians were experiencing was humanity's version of cyber warfare adapted for psychic combat. The human neural interface systems allowed them to hack directly into telepathic networks and introduce disruptive influences that compromised Zephyrian coordination.
Tactical analysis, Valandra demanded through increasingly strained mental communications. How are primitive biological entities defeating evolved psychic abilities? Sage Morthek's response carried the weight of inevitable conclusion. My Empress, the humans have not remained primitive. They have enhanced their biological consciousness with technological augmentation that exceeds our natural psychic evolution.
The engagement continued for several more hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that combined human creativity and adaptability with artificial intelligence processing power and technological precision. My Empress, came the collective telepathic voice of her fleet commanders, continued engagement will result in the destruction of our psychic networks.
Request permission to withdraw.
Valandra was forced to confront a reality that challenged everything the Zephyrian Empire believed about consciousness, evolution, and power. Humanity had not simply resisted psychic domination, they had created artificial psychic abilities that surpassed natural evolution. Colonel Mitchell, she transmitted through conventional communication rather than attempted mental contact. The Zephyrian Star Empire acknowledges the effectiveness of your defenses.
We request permission to withdraw.
Permission granted, Your Majesty, Mitchell replied immediately.
Before you leave, I'd like to share some information that might interest you. The neural interface technology you've encountered today represents our second-generation consciousness enhancement systems.
The implication was clear and terrifying. Humanity was still improving their artificial psychic capabilities. We've also developed third and fourth-generation systems that we haven't deployed yet, Mitchell continued. Our research into consciousness enhancement is ongoing, and we're making significant advances each year. Empress Valandra realized that she was facing an opponent that had turned the very concept of evolutionary advancement into a technological process that could be accelerated and improved at will.
Colonel Mitchell, may I ask why you are sharing this information with us?
Because we want the Zephyrian Empire to make informed decisions about future interactions with humanity, Mitchell explained.
We have no desire to conquer your territory or destroy your civilization.
But we want you to understand that challenging humanity means fighting an opponent that can adapt and evolve faster than natural processes allow. As the Zephyrian fleet withdrew from Serenity Falls, Empress Valandra transmitted a message to the galactic community that would reshape interstellar politics forever. To all species of known space, her telepathic broadcast reached across multiple star systems. The Zephyrian Star Empire formally recognizes humanity as the dominant military power in the galaxy. Any attempt to challenge their supremacy will result in defeat so complete that it will threaten the survival of entire civilizations. The message continued with details that struck fear into every galactic power. Humanity possesses capabilities that transcend the natural laws that govern other species. They have weaponized technology in ways that make conventional military resistance futile. They have enhanced their consciousness beyond biological limitations. Most importantly, they continue to evolve their capabilities at an exponential rate. The final part of Velandra's warning carried the weight of absolute certainty. We have witnessed the future of warfare, and it belongs to humanity. Those who wish to survive must seek accommodation rather than confrontation with these beings who have transcended the limitations of their origins. Word of the Zephyrian defeat spread through galactic communication networks within hours. For the first time in recorded history, a major galactic empire had publicly acknowledged the supremacy of another species and advised all other civilizations to avoid military confrontation. The age of human dominance had officially begun, not through conquest or aggression, but through the simple demonstration that they had evolved beyond the military capabilities that other species considered ultimate. 1 year after the Zephyrian defeat, the political landscape of the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Trade agreements between human colonies and alien worlds flourished as species across known space sought to establish peaceful relationships with humanity. Research partnerships emerged as civilizations offered their most advanced knowledge in exchange for human technological insights. The Galactic Council had even proposed creating a new category of membership specifically to accommodate humanity's unique status. But, in the darkest corners of space, where rogue elements and desperate criminals gathered beyond the reach of civilized authority, a different conversation was taking place. The crime syndicate known as the Blood Cartel had watched the defeats of 4 major galactic powers with calculating interest rather than fear. Supreme Lord Caxon of the Blood Cartel was not a being driven by national pride or territorial ambition. The reptilian crime boss operated under simpler motivations: profit, power, and survival. As he sat in his fortified command ship hidden within the lawless Void Nebula, he studied reports of human military capabilities with the cold pragmatism of a professional predator. "The fools approached this all wrong," he hissed to his assembled lieutenants, his forked tongue tasting the recycled air of the ship's conference room. "They tried to fight humans using conventional warfare and military honor. We will use different methods." Lieutenant Commander Zixvel, a scarred veteran of 100 illegal operations, leaned forward with interest. "Supreme Lord, surely you don't intend to challenge humanity directly? Every major power that has tried has been utterly defeated." Caxon's laugh was a harsh sound that echoed off the metal walls. "Direct military confrontation is for governments and empires. We are criminals, and criminals understand something that honorable species do not: there is no such thing as a fair fight." The crime lord activated a holographic display showing the human colony world of Paradise Haven, a peaceful research station where human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues to develop new agricultural technologies. Paradise Haven has minimal military defenses because it poses no strategic threat to anyone, Caxon explained. The human researchers there are developing technologies that could be worth billions on the black market. More importantly, several of them are the children and spouses of high-ranking human military officers. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Where others had failed through direct military assault, the Blood Cartel would attempt to succeed through terrorism, hostage-taking, and blackmail. "Supreme Lord," another lieutenant asked nervously, "what if the humans respond with the same overwhelming force they used against the empires?" "That's exactly what we're counting on," Caxon replied with predatory satisfaction. "The humans have demonstrated that they can defeat any military force, but they have also shown a peculiar weakness: they care about civilian casualties. They go to extraordinary lengths to avoid harming innocents, even at the cost of tactical advantage." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, chief researcher at Paradise Haven's Xenobiology Institute, was examining samples of alien plant matter when her laboratory's communication system activated with an urgent priority signal. The middle-aged scientist looked up from her work to see the face of her daughter, Admiral Lisa Rodriguez, appearing on the emergency communication screen. "Mom," Admiral Rodriguez said without preamble, "we've detected a large fleet of unidentified vessels approaching Paradise Haven. They're not responding to communication attempts, and their configuration doesn't match any known military or civilian vessels." Elena felt a chill of apprehension but forced herself to remain calm.
Paradise Haven had been chosen as a research location precisely because it was far from any disputed territories or military zones. An armed fleet in this region could only mean trouble. "How much time do we have?" she asked. "Approximately 6 hours before they reach orbital range," Lisa replied. "Mom, I need you to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Something about this doesn't feel right." Elena nodded and activated the station's internal communication system. "All personnel, this is Dr. Rodriguez. We have received notification of an approaching fleet of unknown vessels. As a precautionary measure, we are initiating emergency evacuation protocols. All civilian personnel should report to designated departure areas immediately." But, even as she spoke, Elena knew that 6 hours would not be enough time to evacuate the thousands of researchers, support staff, and their families who lived and worked at Paradise Haven. The station's transportation capabilities were designed for routine personnel rotations, not emergency evacuations. 3 hours later, the criminal fleet entered the Paradise Haven system and immediately began jamming all communications while deploying smaller vessels to surround the research station. Supreme Lord Caxon's plan was proceeding perfectly. "Attention Paradise Haven," his voice echoed through the station's communication system as criminal forces overrode their security protocols. "This station is now under the authority of the Blood Cartel. Any attempt to resist or evacuate will result in the immediate execution of hostages." Dr. Rodriguez felt her blood turn to ice as armed figures in military-style armor began materializing throughout the station via transporter technology. The criminals had come prepared for a siege operation designed to maximize their leverage over human authorities. "Dr. Elena Rodriguez," Caxon's voice continued, now clearly targeting her specifically, "you will report to the station's main conference room immediately. Your cooperation will determine whether your colleagues live or die." Elena made her way through corridors filled with frightened researchers and support staff who had been herded into common areas by armed criminals. The Blood Cartel operatives were professionals who moved with military precision, but their methods were those of terrorists rather than soldiers. In the conference room, Elena found herself face to face with Supreme Lord Caxon himself. The crime boss was an imposing figure whose reptilian features had been enhanced with cybernetic implants that gave his eyes an unnatural glow. "Dr. Rodriguez," he said with mock courtesy, "I trust you understand the situation. Your research station now belongs to me, and every person aboard is my hostage. Your cooperation will determine their fate." "What do you want?" Elena asked, forcing herself to meet the creature's inhuman gaze. "Several things," Caxon replied, settling back in what had been her own chair. "First, you will provide complete data on all research projects currently being conducted here. Second, you will contact your daughter and inform her that any attempt to retake this station will result in mass civilian casualties. Third, you will assist my technicians in downloading every piece of scientific data in your computers." Elena's mind raced as she considered her options. The criminal was clearly counting on humanity's reluctance to sacrifice civilians, but he had made one critical error in his assumptions about human nature. "Mr. Caxon," she said carefully, "I think you may have misunderstood something fundamental about humanity." The crime lord's cybernetic eyes flashed with amusement. "Enlighten me, Doctor." "You're assuming that our concern for civilian safety makes us weak or predictable," Elena continued. "But you're forgetting that humans have been dealing with criminals and terrorists for thousands of years. We've developed very specific responses to hostage situations." Before Caxon could respond, every criminal operative in the station received the same message simultaneously through their personal communicators. "This is Admiral Lisa Rodriguez of the Colonial Defense Fleet. You have exactly 10 minutes to release all hostages and surrender unconditionally. This is your only warning." Caxon's laugh was genuinely amused. 10 minutes? "Doctor, the nearest human military forces are at least 3 days away even at maximum speed. Your daughter is bluffing." Elena smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Mr. Caxon, you've made the same mistake that every other species has made when dealing with humanity. You've assumed that what you can see represents the full extent of our capabilities." At that moment, every criminal operative throughout the station began reporting the same impossible phenomenon. Human military personnel were somehow materializing inside the station despite all sensors showing empty space around Paradise Haven. "How is this possible?" Caxon demanded, his confidence evaporating as reports flooded in of human soldiers appearing in locations that should have been secure. "Quantum teleportation technology," Elena explained calmly. Humanity developed it specifically for hostage rescue operations.
The human forces you're encountering aren't coming from ships, they're being teleported directly from